from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. It's Mind the Gap, a practical web series for young and future music educators. Tonight on the program, from Rowlett, Texas, Renee Lira. From Grove City, Pennsylvania, Joseph Pisano. Tonight's conversation moderated by David Starnes. Please welcome David Starnes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mind the Gap. This is a series that we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 months that is geared toward the student teacher that may have lost that experience last spring, that may be losing it this fall, as well as any young teacher and any first or second year teacher that is really looking for more resource and reinforcement in this really crazy time. My name is David Starnes, and I am currently the Director of Orchestras at Kennesaw Mountain High School in Kennesaw, Georgia. And I serve as an educational consultant for Music for All on a year-round basis. I'm joined tonight by two of our most prolific people in the industry as far as technology goes. First of all, Dr. Joe Pisano, and also Mr. Renee Lira. Tonight's session is a two-part, so we hope that you'll join us for the next one as well, and we'll give that information, those dates out at the end of tonight's program. But it's really geared toward more of a help session for people who are either going into a virtual teaching situation or currently there, or might be in a face-to-face situation right now, and you see your situation going virtual and how you're going to be able to manipulate that and change that modality, which is a very big trick to do that, either side of that. And so tonight, we're really going to focus mainly on the what, and that is the programs that are out there that can help you do that. Some things in terms of course offerings. We're going to talk about synchronous versus asynchronous instruction, which are the two big buzzwords right now in terms of virtual learning. And I think you're going to really come out of this with a great understanding. Up until this year, I served as a university professor at Western Carolina University, and have just recently returned to the public school classroom in the Atlanta Cobb County School District. And I can tell you, on a personal level, I had 1 week to get prepared for what is an all virtual learning environment, where the rest of the district had a 3-week window. I was a very late hire as far as this particular position. And I can't imagine being a young teacher. I'll be doing 32 years this year, but I can't imagine being a young teacher and being thrust into this environment that we're dealing with right now. That Dr. Pisano said, you know, we thought about this back in March, and now we're still doing this. And there's no sign of the change of this. In our current school district right now, we are virtual for the foreseeable future. There's not even a date out there. We've had several schools in the metro Atlanta area that started face-to-face, made it 1 week, and they're already virtual again. So I would say to you tonight, whether you're on one side of the fence or the other of doing face-to-face or virtual, be prepared for virtual. It is unlike anything you will have to deal with, the prep time and the creativity. There is no blueprint for this. They're not going to be teaching this in music education courses in college. You're going to use the internet a lot. You're going to use a lot of resources. You're going to use a lot of friends and colleagues to help you get through this. And that's why we're here tonight. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Joe Pisano and also Mr. Renee Lira. And gentlemen, if you could give us just a little bit about your background and what you do. This is Dr. Joe Pisano.
Hi, thanks, David. Yes, so I've been on, I guess, maybe the forefront of music technology since I was a young kid in school and even before school and college. You know, I kind of worked my way up through it, and then ultimately I started teaching it at grad school, and because it was so new, you know, the younger folks seemed to understand it, and you know, got to work my way through. But I was the director of bands at Grove City College for 23 years. And I taught a number of courses there, including the music technology and jazz courses. And I was also one of the chairs there as well. And we had a really big music technology program, especially at the time, for that. Since then, in the last 10 to 20 years, along with a couple of other folks that are probably well-known names, we started the Music Education Professional Learning Network, Music Facebook group, Music Jazz Ed Facebook group, and a whole bunch of other ones online. And our whole goal was to do exactly what you're doing right now, which is how do we help people be better educators? How do we help people learn quicker so that they can be more efficient, be better teachers, and make the students better learners through the use of technology. I'm currently, a couple years ago, I'm going to say I retired from the what I want to use the word, the vocation of being a college professor, and I actually moved into the industry. One of the things that I've been big on for about 5 or 6 years is band directors and directors as corporate leaders, and how we have all these transferable skills that are industry. The industry wants them. We know for a fact, we've got the research that not just music majors, but kids involved in music, they have something special. And so I made a switch to the industry, and I'm currently the executive vice president at Keystone Ridge Designs, which is a fairly large manufacturing company here in Pennsylvania. And so my avocation is music. It's always going to be. I still do a lot with musetech.net and still do a lot of writing, but I've taken my skills and absolute proof that if you know music, you've got a lot of valuable skills that people want. So thanks for having me on, David.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very, very much for being here tonight. Our next panelist is Mr. Rene Lira. And Rene, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yes, I have been a band director since 1994. I'm originally from, I would guess, San Antonio, Texas. My father was in the military, so we moved around quite a bit until we settled there. But I started it in New Braunfels, Texas. I've spent my entire career here, going between high school and middle school, kind of doing both things. Before my current position here at Rowlett High School, I was a middle school director for 12 years. Here in the town of Rowlett, just at Coyle Middle School. And through that time, I had always had technology as part of my background. I started out with the Apple IIe and the little baby green screen. And I remember doing a project with something called Piware, which is brand new at the time. And I had to design a show, and every 2 sets, a little bomb would come up, and it would just not work, and I had to start over. So that's kind of where I started, along with my Windows 3.1 program. I was the only one in my school that had the computer, the Windows 3.1 with 2 megs of RAM, that I had to purchase 2 more megs of RAM just to run a printer. So I kind of grew up in that environment, but I always had a computer. And then as I went along, I started to really find interest in some of the technology things that were coming out at the time, and given some presentations when we finally got Chromebooks 3 years ago. It was my job to see how to integrate those into the classroom as far as all the VAPA department here, the Fine Arts department here in Garland ISD. So I've kind of been one of the leaders as far as technology goes, trying out the new things, trying to get ahead and utilize those tools for the success of my students. So that's kind of where I'm from, and this is year 26.
All right. Well, thank you both very much for joining us. To our attendees tonight, if you have questions, please pose those in the chat, and as we go through the presentation, we'll address as many of those as possible. We will also be saving that chat for future commentary, maybe on part 2. As well, we may try to reach out to you following this presentation if we don't get to everyone's question. So tonight I broke the program down into 2 basic areas. And the first one is really more from the teacher perspective. It's more about the teacher that's choosing this curriculum that is not really out there. I can tell you that from my leadership in my school district and at my local school as well, that there's a big push to be as creative as possible. There's a big push to allow student engagement as much as possible, for it not to feel like it's a lecture for X amount of time. and at the same time engage the students and keep them active and motivated. And that sounds like it's a really easy thing to do, but when you start developing those lesson plans, those of you who have done this know that there's a lot of pacing and variety of things that go into a lesson. And you can get into even the best made lesson electronically and virtually, and then the pacing go off the rails, and then you are stuck with a 40-minute lesson and another 30 minutes to be able to do whatever you're going to have to do to fill that time. So we're going to help you with that tonight. And again, if you're in a virtual world right now and you may be going face-to-face at some point, you're dealing with this right now. But if you're face-to-face right now, I would challenge you to go ahead and figure out a virtual plan because it could be coming. We don't know what even a month from now is going to look like. And so just be prepared for that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is really about creating that effective lesson plan using technology and using programming and things that might be effective. And I'm going to start with Dr. Pisano, and maybe I've seen him do some presentations and just some things that maybe names of software, names of programs that you feel like work well in an environment such as this. I know you've been counseling teachers for several months now.
Sure. Well, let me maybe first, before we get into some programs, talk about what I think is maybe a primary importance for folks, and we've been talking about this for years, but certainly for the last months. Technology is very important, especially more important than ever. But what we have to remember is that we're music teachers first, and I've always said this, I've always advocated this. Technology is a tool, and it needs to be able to do a couple things for us if we're going to go ahead and use it. And first is that, does it allow you to do something easier, right? Does it allow you to be better at something? Does it allow your students to be better learners? Technology really is the mode that we're dealing with right now when we're dealing with online. So it's a mode of transmission. So I can't be face to face right now, physically with David or Renee, but we can be face to face virtually. Technology is what allows us to do that. So in this case, this is an amazing tool for us to use. As a matter of fact, I would argue right out of the box that the Zoom technologies, the Teams technologies, the Google Meet technologies, these are the most important technologies right now. Understanding these technologies, being able to get comfortable with sharing your screen, being able to get comfortable with understanding that, everyone should have headphones. Is that mic working? The internet speed right now. Is your internet working? Is it working fast? Is there anything you can do about it if it's not? From that standpoint, when we're online teaching, we're really at the mercy of, let's say, the internet service providers, right? And so from that standpoint, make sure that you've got your ISP is solid. Make sure that you've got an updated router. I can't even begin to tell you how important that is. Folks that really don't, that think about this, they've had that router for 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 years. Time for a new one. I mean, the technology of routers between this year and last year, we're talking about mesh technologies now with the Google Nest and the Orbis that are out there by Netgear. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. But these technologies allow things to move faster. And another thing along with that is, when you begin to get online, one of the things David did, he's like, hey, we're getting online here at 6:40 just to make sure everybody's up and running. And we were up and running. We're all old pros at this, but make sure that you're comfortable with the technology. Technology will not save you if you don't know how to use it. And it's only going to create a disaster for your students if you don't know how to use that program that's out there and you don't know how to use that technology, that mode that we're trying to get across there. I was going to just maybe talk real quick, and then maybe we'll let, because I think, I know we're going to talk a couple programs, but I think Renee's probably got some good ideas on this too. But is it possible for me to share my screen at all, David, or I can just talk about? I just wanted to show a real quick graphic. It's okay if we don't have it, but the TPAC model, have you heard of that? Are you guys familiar with that at all? So the TPAC model really talks about three areas. And music teachers, you know, it talks about content knowledge. We're music teachers. We have that down. I always say from the beginning, right? You can choose to go to college to be a business person, or you can choose out of high school to be an engineer, or you can choose to be anything. But you already have to be a pretty good musician to go to college for music, right? Or to be in the band already. I mean, you know, maybe we'll take you, you know, in the lower band if you just started out on trumpet, but you need to be good already. So we've got content knowledge down. The other part of the TPAC model is this pedagogical knowledge, right? How do we teach? Well, new teachers, even old teachers, this is something we do. We're good at teaching. We're really good at this face-to-face model. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these rubrics that we've learned how to do and our unit plans. We're going to take our lesson plans, take all that content knowledge, and we're going to transfer it to you face-to-face. Here's the difference. The technology aspect of this model. So in our case now, when we're online, we have an obstacle in front of us, and that's that technology. So if we can master that technology, we already have that content knowledge down, that pedagogical knowledge, then all you're doing is you're teaching music, which is what you're supposed to be doing in the first place, and you're just using that technology as the mode to transfer that knowledge over longer distances. And I think one of the things that I think all music teachers everywhere can relax and just understand that we might be in our rooms, and we might be in our homes, and our kids might be in our homes, but at the same time, we're still teaching music. This is something we're comfortable with. So I would say, you know, teach the music, and that technology it's going to follow. And Barb Friedman, Dr. Barb Friedman, she talks about that a lot. As a matter of fact, that's one of her mottos. You know, let's teach music. Let's not lose sight that the fact that we're teaching music. So.
So I want to pass this off to Renee. Renee is actually was a part of a pilot program. Music for All has a brand new initiative, and it's with musicprofessor.com. And if you've never heard about this, this is something that is going to be very, very important, particularly in the zone that we're in right now with the virtual learning and virtual teaching. And this is something that the CEO of Music for All, Dr. Jeremy Earnhardt, just solidified this partnership with Music Professor over the summer. And this is now going to be available for anyone who is going to be able to tie into the Music for All education website. So Renee piloted this program, and I'd like for you to give us a little bit of insight about what the program is and how you develop that with your students.
Sure. We were approached by the creator for us to go ahead and try to use that program at school. And basically what it is, it's a set of pre-recorded online lessons. And what these lessons do is they give instruction step by step, just like a private lesson teacher would do in a one-on-one situation. And so what we did was we utilized this both for at-home use and in class use. And so we were able to flip the classroom at times using Music Professor. For example, I would show a video on the screen, because we had a big screen in our room, and as they're looking and as they're performing, I am walking around adjusting embouchures, adjusting hand position, adjusting posture, so we're getting two things done at the same time. And so what that allowed me to do is I had my set curriculum and then the curriculum with Music Professor, and I was able to run two different tracks and then eventually have them intersect and weave in certain sections. And with the availability of these they're very well produced. My district tried to put some videos together, and we did a good job, but it's nothing like the production value of these Music Professor videos. And these are professional musicians, professional lesson teachers that are providing this service. And one of the worries from some of my colleagues were they were afraid this would replace private lesson teachers, and that's not the intention at all. The intention is to supplement those instructions. If you are living in a place that's rural, that does not have a full staff, I was lucky enough to have a full staff with every instrument covered as far as full-time teachers. But if you're not, this is a way to supplement that, but that's not exactly what it's designed to do. It's designed to kind of add as another tool. And I like what Dr. Bisano said. These different programs, these different things are just tools. And it's how we use those tools that define our teaching style. I use the example of if I wanted to dig a hole out in the backyard. How do I do that? Well, I can use a shovel. I can use a backhoe. I can use a spade. I can use my hands. It depends on the situation. And so there's not just a one fix all. So what another thing this allowed me to do is I had a student who decided to join the band in October, and that's late for a beginner. And she's so far behind. So what I was able to do was give her some instructions, put her back there with technology. She watched the music professor videos at her own pace, and within 3 weeks, she was caught up to the class. And so that allowed her to work at home, and allowed her to kind of do these things that we were able to reinforce things at home. Because as if you've taught any kind of children, what you say in class does not make it home really at all, unless you do something bad. That will always make it home word for word, no problem. But the instructions are not always there. So these videos allowed my students to access those and then practice what they saw as far as embouchure goes, as far as breathing goes, as far as air goes. This is how you play this. All these different skill sets were available within this program. And so that's kind of how we started. That's how we used it. And kind of as just these different curriculums running at the same time, running parallel and then crossing each other, really enhanced our teaching and accelerated the learning of my students.
Excellent. Great information. One of the points that I want to talk about, and I'm going to kind of feed this out there and then I'll let our panelists run with it, is basically teaching as far as our training goes and what we know to be when we walk into a rehearsal. I was talking to a colleague just yesterday, and in a world that we are face to face, we are literally preparing our scores. We're listening to recordings. We're the lesson at that point. But there's always an outline, and that is our score or our method book or whatever that might be, along with technology, whether that be metronomes, tuners, or whatever. But it is a very clear footprint about what that is. What I'm quickly learning, and I'm sure many of you are, that if you're teaching in a virtual world right now, is that every single day feels like a brand new experience. Every single day is either a little bit of a carryover from the day before or starting a brand new unit. And it's like, I guess the equivalent would be standing in front of your ensemble with a different score every single day. Because there's not that carryover from the day before. And where there is carryover, it has to be enough change and different in presentation that it doesn't feel like yesterday's lesson. I did something today that I'll share with a room that was, I think, started as an experiment more than anything, and then quickly turned to, I know now that I've got to do something similar to this, but it was a simple link from YouTube, and I played for my orchestra, the Holland Chamber Orchestra, doing one of the Brandenburg concertos, and it was a 10-minute block of time, but by them watching that, they were creating the attachment of music for them. They were actually involved in a rehearsal. It wasn't talking about filling out this Google form, or it wasn't talking about go sign up for Smart Music. It was actually listening. They were using all the skill sets that they actually do when they're in a rehearsal. And so then after that, we followed up with, tell me what you heard, tell me what you saw. And I got everything from the communication of the chamber orchestra and watching one another to, hey, were those Baroque bows that they were using? And why did that bass have 5 strings on it? It instantly opened up another world because it was an attachment to something that they knew and a world that they felt comfortable with, that we weren't both in a new environment. That was the common denominator. So from that, I said to them, well, every day I'm going to pass this off to one of you, and you're going to come to the lesson with a YouTube link to say, I chose this Holst piece of music and the Chicago Symphony playing The Planets because I really like this music, and we all get to enjoy. So every student will now have that assignment. And we start the day every day now with a listening example, putting us into the mode of music. So I'm saying, as teachers, whether you're a veteran teacher or whether you're a new teacher, you really can't go into this with the same bag of tricks that you have seen your predecessors do, or your college teachers or your high school teachers. You can't mirror any of that. And in a way, it's a disadvantage for you. And in a way, it's a real advantage for you, because you're going to develop habits that none of us really have right now that have been in the teaching profession for a while. So I encourage you to follow that lead. And I would always say, just flip the screen and say, if I'm sitting on the other side of that screen and I'm a student, what kind of information and activity would I be most engaged by, and that I would be most enthralled by to hear this delivery rather than sitting in just another lecture? So I'd like to pass off to Renee, and we'll go Renee, Dr. Joe Pisano after in that order. But Renee, can you give us, as a classroom teacher, I think you said you guys are in virtual land right now.
Yes, sir.
So maybe share with how you're dealing with that.
We're trying to have routines with variation. That's kind of what we're trying to do. My students know what we're going to do. There's a list of things. I can't emphasize enough how much planning makes your life easier as a teacher. And I know it's difficult with having the time to sit down there and having to redo everything every day. It seems like every day is a new class. And then, unfortunately, because we're dealing with kids, what worked today might not work tomorrow. And so you have to have those different variations and then have a backup plan to your plan. For example, my technology today was gone. It completely wiped out. My computer wiped out. I had no way of addressing my kids. And so right before everything went down, my drum major took over. She was able to go through some of the marching things. And then I was actually on my phone. I had to go into Google Meets on my phone and finish the lesson in that manner. So I had a backup. I had a backup here. I had my iPad there just in case to address that. But as a day-to-day routine, we make sure our cameras are on. Cameras have to be on. I want to see that they're engaged. I use the same tools that I use in class. I will call on different children. They don't know who they are. They don't know when it's going to happen. And then I try to keep them off balance, just slightly off balance, so that they're engaged. That's the most difficult thing. And those of us teachers that have been in a faculty meeting, even the video ones that we have, will have this, and they're doing this during the faculty meeting and things like that. And our kids, we want to keep them away from that. We're lucky. We have instruments. We can play. We can practice. We can do different things. And they'll have different tasks, but because of the age I'm dealing with, their playing time is 1 minute, 2 minutes. It's not going to be a 15-minute go ahead and practice, because I want to check on them. And so I will have them play this. And so we have rhythm, we have articulation, we have marching that we're actually doing. We're doing all these different things within a class so that by the time we look up, the class is over. And that's kind of how we're trying to push them to keep them. It needs to have a pace. And that's the difficult thing that it took me a long time as a young teacher to get to that point where I can have that pace, and things like that. And when things don't go wrong, don't panic, fix the problem. And that was hard for me today. I'm not going to lie. I was a little flustered because everything shut down. So I had to go to plan W, but I still made it work. We made the class work, and the planning that I had done for that class helped me survive today.
I'm almost glad that happened to you today, because I'm waiting for that to happen to me. So I just learned from you what I could do. And I didn't even think about the phone, but that's a great fallback if you've got the wave or the bandwidth to do that. So that's great. Dr. Pisano.
Yeah, I think, and please call me Joe. The kids used to call me that, Dr. P. Yeah, I agree 100%. The one thing I will say though, and I think people need to keep in front of them, and it really goes back to making sure you understand the mode that you're transmitting in, really well, is for technology to be effective, especially if it's a transportation tool like Google Meets or Zoom, is you need to be fluid with it. And if you're fluid with it, then that technology is transparent and it doesn't necessarily get in the way of what you're trying to communicate across. Thankfully now this stuff's pretty easy, and back to the point, if the technology is working and you don't have a ISP issue or something like that, it's gonna go through. So I can't really stress enough, or maybe I'll overemphasize the comfortability. And David, you hit on something that I think is absolutely critical for old teachers and new teachers and young teachers and out of the box teachers. It is really important that you experience the other side of your transmission, right? We're just always kind of in the front. But if you're trying to show something, maybe work through with somebody and have them teach it to you. So you transmitting something versus somebody using a technology is a very different side of the same coin. So a lot of times, kind of flip that around and see, okay, what are my students actually experience with me telling them, this, and is it going to actually go the way that I think it is, or it is? And that comes back to prep, right? And boy, man, you hit that, right? You actually have to work harder to teach online effectively, especially the synchronous side of this, because you've got you're juggling a lot in the air. One of the things I found really cool, though, and let me just throw this out there, a lot of we're seeing some people do from kind of the call and response that's really happening with Zoom sometimes. Jazz education is really interesting online through Zoom mode, because even though we know that we can't sync up, and for the first time, I'm so excited about this. I think now 99% of music educators have heard the word latency now, and what kind of that causes when trying to sync up. If anyone has tried to do the clapping thing, and you just see it doesn't work, right? But call and response is amazing, or imitation is amazing. So if I pull out my horn and I play something, okay, well, now you can play it back to me. Another person, well, some other people, while they're muted, they can try it, and then we're going to go one-on-one down the line. Even improvisation works amazingly well, even though you might not be exactly synced up. But you're playing, okay, well, when we get to the end of the round, you unmute yourself, I'll mute me, and then we'll listen. And I'll listen back, and then, we can critique that. And I think we lose sight of just some folks, I've heard, wow, the quality of the microphone that's built into these Chromebooks and all this. Okay, that might be true, and it is true that if you're a teacher, spend that $80 and find a decent microphone and a really good, set of headsets, so it's going to help you, and you're only going to sound that much better to your students. If your student has, let's use the word garbage speakers, they're using built-in speakers. If you've got a garbage microphone, that is a recipe for disaster. But if you've got a pretty decent microphone, and even if they don't have the best speaker, I'm disappearing here. I need to maybe turn on some lights. I put a green shirt on, and I've got a green screen. That was brilliant today. My point with that is, the better microphone you have, it's going to make it better for your students, as well at that. But there are some really cool things you can do. And one of the things, David, you were talking about was listening and critiquing. If you haven't thought about this yet, the Google Forms, I'm going to turn a light on here as soon as I finish this up, so that I'm not disappearing on everybody. One of the things that you can do with that is it's very easy to create surveys. And you can create, and I've been talking about this for years at Music for All, even before this. Create a 3-question survey about the quality. What did you hear? What are these different things? And if you don't know this, Google Forms will automatically correlate and summarize all that stuff for you. So you get these awesome graphs of people that thought it was great or didn't think it was great, or what they heard. And that's something you can do online, especially with the older students. With maybe a junior high group or something like that, maybe you are talking, but there's a tremendous amount of things that you can do. Even with microphones that don't have the best quality, you can still hear rhythm, you can still hear some tone, you can hear whether they're flat or sharp. If you're looking at it from a performance venue. If you get beyond the performance venue, then there's a ton of things you can do. So again, and that's just with Google Meets. We haven't even talked about the Music Professor, which is amazing, things like entire platforms like Music First. If you haven't seen that, that is a great platform online. It's a built-in LMS, musicfirst.com as well. So I'm just going to step out for a quick second, turn the light on here, and I'll be right back.
Great, thank you. Well, we're going to transition because I don't know who's in the room right now in terms of grade level, but we're trying to gear this towards not only band, but also orchestra and even general music, because I think there's a lot of the platforms that within a virtual foreground or background that we've all got to be ready for. And one of the things that I want to talk about is maybe how you create in-class and out-of-class assignments. And Joe brought up the Google Forms thing. I'm also using a thing called Flipgrid that maybe some of you guys have used before. If you haven't seen that, you need to check it out because it's almost like an educational Snapchat. And I had one of my kids say today that's a freshman in high school. They had never used it before, and their assignment tonight is a get to know you. And what I'm asking them to do is take a 1.5-minute video of themselves to say, this is who I am, my name, this is the grade, this is the instrument that I played, this is where I went to middle school, here's something neat about me. And then they pick up their instrument and they play 30 seconds of something for me, hit send, and they're done. They can do it right off of their phone. It's an app. So those are the kinds of things in terms of homework assignments. It's really kind of hard to do this when we're looking at, now go write a 1-page paper and then email that to me. I don't think you want to do that kind of stuff right at the beginning or the middle part of the semester. That could be a culminating experience. But another thing you might look at is one of the things I'm going to do with my orchestra program is dedicate 2 weeks to each period of music. And we're going to start in the Renaissance and we're going to go all the way to 20th century over 5 different units. But within those 5 different units, there will be a historical perspective of what was actually happening in the world during that particular time of music and how did that maybe influence the music of the time. And now who are some of those composers? And the students will choose one of those composers and do a 1-page expose on that. And then through Smart Music, I will assign them that composer and they will actually play a piece of music. And then on a Friday, we have a recital day that actually demonstrates that whole 360 culminating event. All that stuff is things that they can research online and still keep it in a digital mode, if you will, but at the same time, there's a performance aspect to it that is the culminating experience, a la concert, if you will, or recital. So I want to talk about, pass this off to Renee, and just talk about maybe some of the things you do as far as in class and how you transition that to an out-of-class experience that leads to the next in class.
Well, the trick is, I think, is tying the two things together. And so that we can have a lesson in person and then have an additional one for us. Sometimes what we try to do, like with my first assignments that were asynchronous, they were simple. I wanted a schedule of when they were going to practice. I just wanted to know when each day you were planning to practice. I know life happens, I understand that, but just give me the time in your schedule so that we have it there. I also wanted a picture of their practice space. I wanted a picture of their proper chair, their music stand, and things like that. So that was another, hey, upload a picture of this. Speaking of Flipgrid, I love Flipgrid because there's 2 ways to do it. They can submit an assignment, but then they can also submit an assignment where others can see them and they can critique, and you can say, well, just comment, say one thing about at least one other person. And so there's no pressure like peer pressure. And that will kind of motivate them just a little bit to practice, to be honest with you. And they get to do it over and over again. When we've been using Smart Music for about 10 years. When I was at Coil, we used it for quite a while. And so what I loved about my students, sometimes they would get frustrated because Mr. Lira, I did it 80 times until I got it right. And I kind of giggle because that's what we call practicing. And so that's what it's for. And so with the looping feature and all those other things, that the tools that they have, that will help them. So, and I try to give them, when I give them asynchronous stuff, it's depending on their age and their ability. We have 3 different levels here at the high school. So the different assignments have 3 different things. The younger bands, they're shorter assignments. They're gonna be, because they just don't have yet developed that ability to self-regulate, self-discipline, and get those things done. So the small little chunks that we have, you can do a couple things. You can have a list that they have a certain amount of period to do, and they can just have little chunks in there, or you could give it to them themselves, and say, okay, this week you do this one, this week you do. It depends on how you want to play that, and how you want to enhance what you're teaching in class. If you tie them together, they will be more interested in doing those asynchronous assignments if there's value when you see them face to face, because that gives them a reference point and it kind of keeps that lesson going, especially if you see them every other day, which is a possibility. So we can limit how many kids are in the building on a certain time. We might have half and half coming. We might have, it just depends. There has never been anything like this. So we just have to be flexible and adjust on the fly. That's really it.
Great words. Thank you so much, Renee. Joe?
Yeah, man, it's amazing. It's sage advice. What you're talking about there. I absolutely think the other thing too. I want folks to realize is, sometimes you have to modify your expectations to meet your reality, right? So, I mean, if you're thinking you find yourself in an online situation or some kind of hybrid that you're going to get through everything, you're not, and that's okay. What you're trying to do is provide meaningful music experiences for these kids. That's what you're doing. You're there to teach, you're there to transfer knowledge, but you're there to make connections, and you're to make these things meaningful for these kids. Music, we love music. So kids love music. Everyone loves music. Even the people that say they don't love music love music. They're the ones listening, to in their car or wherever they're at. So I think that's important to give yourself a little slack and realize that, okay, well, maybe I could have went through all this stuff in a year and or in a semester or a 9 weeks period or whatever it is that you might have, but you're gonna have to slow down a little bit. But that's also maybe one of the beauties of a hybrid where you're doing the synchronous and the asynchronous. With the asynchronous side, those kids that are really, keeping up, then you can maybe give them a little bit more work, or they can go a little further down the road, and you can give them a couple extra assignments. And the kids that aren't, okay, well, let's backtrack, let's slow down, let's get them the help they need so that we can bring them up. And you use those synchronous times to teach it all, get it in there for that. But that goes back to what I said. Everything's more time now, as you're trying to do both, for that. There are, David, is this a 1 hour show or?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm going to give you guys a link to that it's a phenomenal resource. You may have heard the name Katie Wardrobe. She's a phenomenal music educator from Australia. She's been friends with our kind of inner music technology group for over a decade, and she travels over here a lot. You can catch her at TMEA sometimes and some different things, but her resources that she puts out are next to none as far as amazing. And she has an online resource that she updates all the time. And it's called the Ultimate Free Music Tech Guide. And this resource has literally dozens and dozens and dozens of vetted music teacher vetted software that's out there, and from music theory like musictheory.net to flat.io. If you're familiar with online music notation programs, and I think a lot of us are migrating that way now. Of course, MuseScore was the original kind of free one. Everyone knows Sibelius, everyone knows Finale. Those are amazing programs. But there are some programs out there that you can get for free. MuseScore is one of them. You can get a free online collaborative version of notation software called Noteflight, and also flat.io. One of the cool things about flat.io now is that it integrates into Google Docs. So if you're already using Google Docs and you're putting Word documents, you can literally just kind of punch in notes and little excerpts in there with this little cool add-on from flat.io. But there's just, there's so many really amazing things out there. But here's what I'm going to caution everyone. And this happens to all new teachers, and it happens to veteran teachers that for the first time are thrown into the fire pan of this panacea of all these apps and technologies. Don't try everything. That's number one. Really, if you're involved online, I'm going to tell you the music teachers Facebook group, the band directors group, the choir groups that are out there, these groups, you can get on there and they're going to tell you, like, yeah, you know what, try, if you're doing your own creative, maybe try Canva. You get on there and you can do some really cool things with that. Or if you've got a little bit of money, it's not too much money, Music First has all these amazing programs like Soundation built into it. It's got, it has Noteflight built into it, and a lot of hearing software, ear training software as well, but it has a built-in LMS. And all these things work, by the way, Now, if you get into some of these, they're going to work with your LMS, or you're going to find a way to integrate them through kind of third-party integrations. That's one thing too. We really haven't talked about that. Every school seems to have its own LMS now, its own learning management system. Some of them are really awesome, and some of them you look at them and go, wow, this is like right out of Windows 3.1, right? And, like how is this still 21st century technology? But one of the cool things is like Flipgrid. You can take URLs and take a really terrible LMS and really use it, by connecting it to some of these other softwares. I will tell you this, though. A lot of times, as a new teacher, you've got to make your case with software because schools have really tightened down. So, do your research, and talk to that IT person or your principal to see, hey, this is really going to help me, this particular piece of technology. It's vetted. Hundreds and hundreds of school districts are using it. Can we use it? And usually, if you can make the case, in an informed case, they're going to help you with that. So I'll put in the I'll real quickly post that ultimate free guide link as well on there. But that is a resource if you're looking for free things. It's definitely something to check out, and it's a huge PDF. But I'll put that link out right now.
That's fantastic, Joe. And I think I'll be taking some of that information as well back to my classroom tomorrow. So thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that Joe hit upon, and we always talk about, well, we don't have the money for this, we don't have the money for that. I had a principal tell me the other day, if there's ever a time to request technology, now is the time. And it may stick. If you could make good use of it, it may be a thing that you can use even farther down the road, because I got a feeling that not only has the pandemic changed our world, I think it's going to change the way we teach. I think it's going to change the way we do planning and face-to-face. I think it could be a long-term tsunami that's going to hit us, or has hit us, that it's going to just change the way we do education. So in a good but bad way, those of you that are young teachers, you're at the forefront of this. So most of us are at the twilight of our career, and so you get to take this to the next level and hopefully impart knowledge in a new format that we never ever knew before. So we've got a few minutes left, and one of the things I want to talk about, and Renee, you hit on this, was the student engagement trigger and how to best utilize when a student puts an instrument in their hand, and not only to know that the lesson still has a lot to do with playing, even though it may not be in an ensemble format, but some of the devices that you've used, obviously Music Professor, again with Music for All, we're incredibly honored to be a part of that program. WIN Players, you're in the driver's seat on this one right now because it is built for that. And down the road, we're looking at not only integrating strings, but also integrating choir as a potential with this as well. So be looking for that. But if you're in a WIN player or you're a WIN teacher, jump all over that. So Renee, maybe from the great state of Texas, how you guys are keeping those incredible musicians playing during this pandemic?
It's the thing that I try to create is a safe environment for my students to perform. And that's easier in person than it is online. And so what I try to do, one of the tricks I've learned over this pandemic is I will have kids play individually, but I will not make any corrections until 3 or 4 of them go by. And then I will say, this is what I saw, this, and this. That way the child isn't afraid of playing, because that's really the hardest part. That's what I'm having a hard time. They don't want to put their face on the screen. They don't want to play in front of everybody. But my attitude is, it's okay. We are definitely all in the same boat. I completely understand. This is all brand new, so this is safe for you. If you make a mistake, that's okay. I make mistakes all the time when I'm playing. I've never played a piece perfectly. Not even an F concert for 4 counts. There's something I could have done better. And so that's what we're trying to do is create that assignment. And that's kind of one of the things because at first I was correcting every kid, and that was a mistake. And I could kind of see their body language. And so, I tell my younger colleagues that experience is the accumulation of mistakes and their answers. It's not the right answers. We've just already messed up. We've already made our mistakes, and so we kind of know what's going on now. So that's where I'm always kind of learning and watching how those kids acted. So that's kind of what I've incorporated this week. This is our second week actually at school. We started last week. And so picking on one person and correcting them, I didn't get that right vibe from them. So it is engaging in that positive environment, a safe environment. If you play and you mess up, we're okay, we're fine. And then the other thing is we are focusing on the individual player and giving them individual goals within the system. And so, for example, we are going to, whether we march or not, we are going to have a video, a virtual concert of our marching show with the little squares and everything like that. That's what our goal is at the end. So they understand we will perform as an ensemble. It just might be individually. We're not exactly sure. But they have to have a goal. They have to have a reason to play. And that reason can be you're going to get rewarded from this, or it could be because it's a grade, or it's because if you just give grades, that's going to wear off after a while. Even if you just give them stickers, they really like stickers. But even if you do that, it doesn't matter what age. That will kind of do. So you want to vary the different rewards that we have and different ways of evaluation and things like that to keep them on their toes, to keep them motivated. That's really hard. And the last thing I will tell young teachers is, unfortunately, the amount of energy you put into it, especially on the screen, you're only going to get 10% back. So if you want them here, you got to be 10 times higher than that, because that's just the way it is. And you have to, and don't get frustrated. It's okay. You are doing great. You are so much more prepared as a young teacher than I was at your age. I'm envious of you guys. You guys are, it's some of the things, coming out of college, it just amazes me as an older teacher. And I learn a lot from my colleagues that are in their first 5 years, as much as they ask me and I answer their questions. But they have so much knowledge as far as how to think on as a younger person. I'm getting to the get off my lawn age. I don't know if you guys are, but
already there, buddy.
Yeah. So that's where I'm having to fight that. So even the youngest teachers, the first, second year, third years, have many things to offer. And please don't be afraid to do that and offer what you think and your ideas.
Joe?
Yeah, I always say, if you want your students to be engaged, you have to be engaging, right? I mean, it's just one of those things. We always talk of, we all had these conducting professors that told you, when you step up on that podium, it's a new world. You need to transform yourself. And it's kind of the same thing getting in front of any class at any time, and you have to be engaging and you've got to be ahead of your game. But sometimes it's okay to stop and pause and think. And a number of years ago, there was a big push, and there's always a push for young teachers to have mentors. And I'm telling you, that's just as valuable, that advice today as it was back then. But another thing that these young teachers might to take as an idea, and the seasoned veteran teachers, I'd like to throw this out as well, is it's good for us to have a younger teacher as a mentee mentor as well, because the generations are a lot closer than ever as far as the knowledge, but at the same time, there's a whole lot of gaps that are being missed, and I think that veteran teachers can really learn from younger teachers, and younger teachers have a whole lot to learn from veteran teachers as well. And I think, and I would tell this to my students, and I'll tell it to anyone listening today, is you already have contacts. I mean, you all, any teacher out there, you went to college. Your professors are out there. The people that you went to school with, they're out there. They're now your colleagues. And hopefully you're getting out to see some of these other districts, and maybe you get out at some point to go to a TMEA or one of these larger things like the Midwest Clinic, and you're going to meet more people. So we're constantly learning, and that is a huge value to take advantage of the knowledge of the other folks that are out there. I had another thought. We were talking about kind of the using the Zoom and the different things, for the communications out there. Another thing that you don't think of is, what a great time for us to have these students practice some of these skills that we maybe don't get so much because we're working on music so much. These oral skills. A number of teachers have done even things where they'll have all the trumpet players try, listening, okay, well, was that in tune or was it out of tune? Was it flat or was it sharp? And you can even have examples for that, and that you're playing, and they can develop that as well. So there's a lot of things we can do during this time that I'm hoping some of these things don't go away. and we incorporate some of these, not everything. We want some of this to go away, but that some of the things we're learning and that we're concentrating on now, hopefully that's going to make us better teachers moving forward as well. I can tell you this, that if you would have in February said, we're gonna put $100 billion into making sure that every teacher knows how to teach in a distance mode. We would have had to have 3 years. We would have had to have endless seminars. We'd have put committees on it. You'd have been having all these MEAs, and we would not be as far as we are right now as teachers understanding this technology as we are right now. So it is amazing to see when you think, okay, well, I've never really done this Zoom stuff. Well, we've all done it now. We've never done this Google Meet stuff. We've all done it now, and we're all good at it. So think about the possibilities that you're going to have moving forward just by, unfortunately, being thrown into the fire and having to learn all this stuff. So I think there's a lot of good that's going to come out of this for our profession as well.
I'm going to wrap up tonight by recommending that maybe you look into a gentleman named Scott Edgar. He is on the Music for All education team, and it has nothing to do with technology, but it has everything to do with keeping you sane and your students sane. And I'm certain most of you have heard the social and emotional learning format and what that is in our society today. Continue to keep your kids at the forefront of all of your curriculum and all of your planning, and know that as frustrating as it is maybe for us in terms of creating this blueprint, that they go home every single day or offline every single day, whichever it might be, whether it's a hybrid modality, that there is that frustration that they have as well. They can't do the things that they're wanting to do either. And I think that's for both of us to understand that we are in it together. I would recommend you looking into Scott Edgar's research and Scott Edgar's words. They're very reassuring. And you're going to see a lot more of that happen over the next few months. Our part 2 of this segment will actually take place on September 8th. And that's going to be more of the teacher in the classroom and how they're actually utilizing some of this stuff. It's more of the how and the planning as we get a little bit deeper into the semester and what's going great and what do we have to back up and redo. We'll be very, very fortunate to welcome Mr. Corey Futrell, who's the Assistant Director of Bands at Kennesaw Mountain High School. He works on the staff of Carolina Crown also. They've done smart music with Crown for years and years and years, but he's going to bring to us some technology because he just finished, oddly enough, his specialist degree in instructional technology right at the height of this pandemic. So it's very fresh. There's some great research he's going to share with us. Also, Ms. Paula Kupasevich, who is the Director of Orchestras at North Cobb High School. She is doing a lot of online teaching and some video segments actually of her technique and pedagogy that she's sharing with students, and she's going to share that with us. I think she's online tonight. So Paula, thank you for joining us. And a name that is synonymous with excellence in the great state of Texas, Mr. Jarrett Littman from Claudia Taylor Johnson High School will be with us and share some of their trade secrets that they're doing in the classroom right now as well. I want to say a big, big thank you to Yamaha Corporation of America for allowing this kind of format to take place. There's so many things that Yamaha does for Music for All throughout the year. And I saw Mr. Dave Gerhardt on here tonight from Yamaha. Dave, thank you so much. And if you'd pass on to your colleagues the benefit that this has for young teachers and education worldwide. And also, I just want to reiterate that it's Music for All's mission to create positive, or to create and provide and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. The vision of Music for All is to be a catalyst and to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in an active music making, whether in his or her scholastic environment, and whether it be virtual or online. That mission could not be more relevant right now. Music for All is an educational entity right now, where they've been known for events. The events aren't there, obviously, and we are jumping in knee deep and waist deep as far as the education piece of this, and doing all we can from the educational side of things. And I want to say thank you to Maddie Fitzgerald and Haley Mack, who helped produce this program tonight, and Mr. James Stevens, who works on the education and advocacy department for Music for All. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. I want to say again, a thank you to I have to say Dr. Joe Pisano, but I'll just say thank you to Joe and thank you to Renee. Gentlemen, your information is absolutely spot on. And I think we're all going to get up tomorrow morning and be looking at what is a crazy world with a little bit more focus based on your background and your help with us. So I cannot thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope you'll come back for part 2 on September 8th. Good night.